and welcome to That Shakespeare Life. I'm Cassidy Cash, and this is the channel where we go behind the curtain and into the real history of William Shakespeare and explore what it was like to live in turn of the 17th century England the way Shakespeare would have lived it. Today, we're exploring one of the heroes of Thanksgiving here in the United States, and that's a man named Squanto. His given name was Tisquantum, but he came to be known as Squanto, and he was a Native American interpreter and guide for early English colonists. Little is known about his early life, but we do know that he was taken from his home to England in 1605 by George Weymouth, and he was able to return to his homeland with explorer John Smith somewhere between 1614 and 1615. That means that Squanto was living in London for almost a decade that directly coincides with when Shakespeare is known to have been living and working there, writing some of his plays that included details about shipwrecked colonists encountering native tribes on mysterious faraway islands, which sounds a lot like A New World, really. Squanto's story is covered up in debate and even mystery, as many of the details of his life are simply unknown to us today. So there are gaps in his story that we just don't know. But what is intriguing about Squanto is that he might have encountered Shakespeare during his residence in London. Now, we've no reason to think Squanto was friends with Shakespeare, and I'm not making that statement. What I am saying is that Shakespeare was a big dude in London, and he was well known. Certainly his work was well known. So it's highly likely that Squanto knew who William Shakespeare was. Now, today, in honor of Thanksgiving being next Thursday, I wanted to share with you the story of Squanto's first interactions with the Pilgrims when they first landed in Plymouth in 1620. To get all the details about this interaction and exactly how it went down in the early mid 17th century, I sat down with David and Aaron Bradford. They are historians and descendants of William Bradford, who was the leader of this group of pilgrims, and members of the Society of Mayflower Descendants in the state of Delaware. Here's what they had to say. So after Squanto came back and he found his village decimated, we know that at some point between that tragedy and 1620, he's interacting with the Pilgrims. So what do we know about Squanto's interaction with the Pilgrims when they arrived at Plymouth in 1620?
When the Pilgrims arrived in 1620, Squanto was not, he was aware that they arrived, but along with the other Nauset Indians, but they did not really reach out until the spring of the following year. So in March of 1621 is when Squanto came to speak and actually was involved after Samoset came into their midst and introduced himself, and then there was the negotiation with the Massasoit Assamequin, who was the chief of the Wampanoag Nation, if you will, about 30 tribes spread around that area. And Squanto was very influential, and Bradford referred to him as an instrument sent of God for our good beyond our expectation. He directed us how to set our corn and where to take fish and procure other commodities, and was our pilot and took us to unknown places for our profit and never left us till he died.
Now, that's just a brief version of Squanto's story, but you can see that he is definitely worthy of his hero status, since his involvement with the Pilgrims was essential to their survival in those first perilous few months after their arrival in the New World. I hope you enjoyed learning some more about the history of this incredible figure of American history. If you would like to hear the rest of Squanto's story, including what he was doing in London while he lived there and what we know about his voyage home with John Smith, you can listen to our entire podcast episode with David and Aaron Bradford right now, completely free at CassidyCash.com/episode 240. That's CassidyCash.com/EP240. That's completely free to listen. The whole episode is up and available there, so feel free to dive in and hear the complete interview. There's also visual elements that coordinate with Squanto's life, like paintings and diagrams, and we've got illustrations. They're from the 17th century, so they're drawings, but they show you southern New England and where the different tribes were living at the time when the Pilgrims landed. We've got all of those things packed into the Patron extras, so you can also sign up on that page to join us on Patreon to immediately expand all of the visual history elements that go along with the podcast. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. I know I am incredibly grateful for you for joining me here each week to explore the life of William Shakespeare and 17th century England the way that he would have lived it. It's really fun to share this history with you, and I'm glad that you're here. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and that you learn something new about the Bard. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.